Welcome to the Gender Reveal Party. This is our kickoff debut episode, if you will. I don't know what we're going to call these episodes, but this is the Gender Reveal Party where we reveal gender, not genitals. And my very first guest in this episode, my very first iteration of this brainchild that I have is one of my all-time best friends. And this is I call her Doc. And Doc, are you still using she, her pronouns?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I call her Doc, and Doc is someone that, gosh, we've been friends, coming on 20 years.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's been a minute,
Yeah.
right? And I have had, I'm a 90% extrovert, so I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of people in my life. And some people come into your life and, you meet them and you get to know them and that's somebody that they grow on you and then they're in your life. For me, Doc, I don't know. I think we've talked about this before, but just for our audience's sake too. And I think you know this, but for me, I met you and it was like Insta friend. I mean, It was like Insta coffee. Like it was instant. Like
yes,
we just met and it was like we are friends. Like we are going to be friends. And nowadays I might say we were on the same vibe or our vibration was in alignment.
Right.
Back then we were just wow. Hi, it's great to see you again. Almost. It was really brilliant. And so we've been friends now for 20 years. And I used to live in DC where Doc lives. And now I don't, and we don't get to see each other very often. And when we do, though, it's Insta friend, right? It's just back to So I love you so much, and
man,
you're really like one of my top 10 favorite humans on the planet. You really are.
Thank you.
So I'm just delighted to have you here, and we are releasing this on National Coming Out Day, which is an important day, and something that you and I did not have when we were coming out.
No, we did
not. So it would be my honor to hear from you and your own introduction of yourself, but also your coming out story.
Sure. I thank you first for inviting me and having me do this. I mean, how often do we get a chance to talk about ourselves in this kind of really personal way? Hardly ever. So I was born and raised here in DC. I have lived some other places, but I always come back to DC because it's home for me. And my family is all here. So part of why that's important is that unlike a lot of people who were coming out at that time, they would move away and come out. I came out where I was born and raised. Mm-hmm. And so I had to pretty much learn early on in my coming out experience to just be myself and that the chips fall where they may, as it. And so I had to, even when people come out elsewhere, they still often have to struggle with their families. Mm-hmm. So I had to do that, but usually face to face. I distinctly remember the time when my father realized that the woman I brought to their house was somebody I was sleeping with. And he was not happy. But, ultimately my parents, they both came around and in my family, it's no longer even a thing. Really, I'm just Aunt Diana or, cousin D or whatever. So that for me was kind of part of it. At the same time, though, in, neighborhoods, I often had to assert myself, from having to, literally fight people, physically fight people. Or threaten to fight them. That's all it took, the idea that I might come at them. So that was kind of, and the whole thing about the present generation and what coming out is like for them now is astounding to me because it was for me very wrought with anxiousness, and what's going to happen, and every time you told someone or allowed them to know that you were not a straight heterosexual person, you had to prepare, right? You had to really prepare to have your heart broken or your face punched or your job lost, or, this did not happen to me, but have your kids taken, all kinds of shit, right? So
right.
It was it was a little different then, and I know that for a lot of young people now, depending on where they are, it is still difficult, right?
For sure.
If they are in a certain environment, it may be easier for them. And I marvel at the 12, 13-year-olds who come out either as queer or genderqueer or whatever, and their parents are like, bet, we got you, no worries. That astounding, right? Because even with my parents, there was a process, right?
right.
Process.
Yeah.
And I'm talking years long process.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad for that to be the case now. And I kind of claim, I claim some credit.
Absolutely.
So.
We paved the way for that.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, we did. We definitely did. I did try to be straight because, I don't know. It was, it was the times, and we weren't supposed to be queer. So, okay, I'm going to try to be straight. And I got married and everything, and had a baby, for which I am completely grateful.
Absolutely.
I have no regrets about that part of it. And even, I shed that relationship pretty quickly. So it like wear me down as much as it might have. But so I had a child, and I took her with me into the gay lesbian community at that time. And, we just tried to make it. We tried to have a life and survive. And at that time here in DC, there were lesbian group houses. Right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They don't actually, I don't think, exist so much today, but back then there was a whole network of houses where lesbians all lived together. So I lived in 2 different ones at different times, and daughter. And
that's fantastic.
Oh man, that was.
Our community has always had to take care of itself, right? Have you ever watched the TV show Pose?
Yes.
Right, with the houses that that's a different kind of. I mean, but it's the same thing. We're supporting our own. I remember being a young 20-something and having 9 lesbians end up crashing at my house. I think I was the only one with the full-time job at the time, because they were kids. I mean, I was 27. Most of them were at 19 or 20 years old. And just like not being able to go home, and and I don't want to stop you, but I remember.
No.
I mean, I'm glad to hear that too, that you got to stay in these places.
Yeah, but the whole thing of having a safe place to lay your head, right, was very important. Right?
Still is.
Even though the drama of the houses could get to be a little much,
right?
Sex and breaking up and relationships and falling outs, and but you could still lay your head down, right? And nobody was gonna boot you out or come rough you up while you were sleeping,
right?
So that was actually very, very important for me, and it was through those group houses that I was able to find a lot of my jobs. Which was also, it's like that's the other thing. Back then, it was hard to find work.
Yeah,
when you were an out lesbian or gay man,
right?
So that was really important too, and I just am always grateful that I was able to do that, because I do know that there were a lot of folks, a lot of women in the community at that time who didn't live in the group houses, right? So they still had many of the other struggles around housing and being safe and all of that.
Right.
And it was also a time when that second wave of feminism was happening. So a lot of what it was like for me was getting into those feminist spaces and making them safe for lesbians.
Yeah.
I got actually purged. That was the word we used at the time. I got purged from a job at the local battered women's shelter because someone came in as the new executive director and decided there were too many lesbians working there. And she really just set about her own campaign of, she couldn't really fire us because we were all working very hard and doing our jobs and doing them well. But what she was able to do was make us miserable.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, at some point, each of us were like, you know, fuck this shit. And we left. And I've had people, younger people, look at me strangely when I talk about that, because they just really can't put their heads around that somebody would actually do that. But indeed, you know, it was done, and I was a recipient of that bigotry. But, you know, for me, it's just been a constant thing of staying myself.
Yeah.
That was my thing. I'm going to be myself. You're going to either take me or leave me. If you want to leave me, that's totally fine. It's not going to hurt me in that process. But if you know, I'm not your cup of tea, move along. That's fine. Right. And for me, that's just been the best way to, you know, approach my life.
Right. Just to be authentically you. So yes. One of the things that, you know, the gender reveal party, our tagline is we reveal gender, not genitals, because the genital reveal parties that these people are having for these babies in utero, which you actually get revealed to you are the child's genitals, whether there's actually a penis or a vulva. So they're actually revealing genitals, which is insane. Yes. And we reveal gender. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have you, another reason I wanted to have you as one of my first people is that one of the things you and I have in common, up until I took testosterone, right? Because once I flipped over into the testosterone world, then the world started viewing me as man. It didn't matter what I said. Right. All they did is they just saw what they saw. So no matter what, even though I'm a woman in man skin now, like I have no testosterone in me, I'm a woman in man skin, they still see me as man. And most of them can't remember or acknowledge that I'm not. But up until that time I took testosterone, you and I have had very, even though I was born in a small town in Kansas and you were in DC, obviously we had very different lives to live in that way. And I had the Midwestern white experience and you had the East Coast black experience. We both walked through the world as butch humans. Right. And so you have always walked through the world as a butch human. And when I use that word butch, because I love being a butch and loved that. And part of what I had to give up when I took on testosterone was a hardest choice for me was like, am I going to give up that whole idea and role as a butch human, and especially not being able to be identified by other butches, because that in and of itself is like huge for me, like just being able to have another butch. Like when you and I met, it was like pow, you know, like we are almost the same human. But so it doesn't, so even though today we have the word non-binary, which is like, this is the non-binary flag, and I identify as I've always identified as non-binary. I used to call myself a genderqueer. You have always been an other, right? I mean, from like me, probably from the time you were little. And even you even said, like, even when you were trying to be straight. So talk to me a little.
Was like, no, you're not.
So you've had a chance to see the show.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think? What'd you think about the show?
Oh man, it was so much fun. I mean, I got the sense that you wanted it to be fun, so I had a lot of fun watching it.
Good.
And just to hear things like, you were a tomboy, I was a tomboy,
right.
and that whole tomboy experience, which it's still very dear to me.
Me too. Yeah.
I'm very much in love with that little tomboy.
Same.
That I am still actually
Same.
in. So to hear you talk about that was really great. And just all of the ways that our very personal identities evolve, right?
Right.
I'm a butch, but it's more, I think I tend to think of it now as being more non-binary, right?
Yes. Yeah.
At the time it was just more like,
right. We didn't have the word non-binary.
Right. We didn't have language. So it was like, well, I'm just, this butch.
Right.
Which kind of still for me says it all, but it's nice to have that additional articulation around it, right?
Right. 100%.
Yes. So for internally butch, externally I say non-binary, and people kind of get that a little better. So I mean, it was so to see you talk about those things, and actually even right now I still struggle a little bit with the pronouns, mostly because in my head I'm like, whatever, choose the one that works for you. It's like,
sure.
Because people think they are misgendering me a lot, right?
Right.
I don't think of it that way.
Right.
They do, right? So I get a sir, and then I open my mouth and they're like, like,
sorry, ma'am.
like maybe they stab me in the neck or something. They're like, and I'm like, it's
okay. But then that always puts you in a position of taking care of them, right? Yes. That's always the thing that happens. It used to happen to me all the time too. I'd open my mouth and they'd be like, "Oh, sorry, ma'am. Sorry, I'm sorry." And it's like, oh my God. Now it happens with the they them pronouns. It's like I really prefer they them pronouns. And if you mess up, okay, but move on. Like, okay, just say God, but don't with that whole I'm so sorry. It's like, then I have to take care of you and make it more about you.
And can I just have my Big Mac? Thank you.
Exactly. So in the show, I talk a lot about being classically trained female. And one of the things I love
that you put it that way.
Yes. Thank you, because I think it is. I think it's training, and but I'm also very clear that I was classically trained female in the Midwest as a female Midwestern white child, right? And so you have the other experience of being classically trained in a Black family in Washington, D.C. in the right when segregation was like kicking off, right? I mean, we were at a very different time. Yes. Could you speak to that for us? Like, give us a peek into your world in that?
Well, it's a bit different in Black culture, because the classically trained Black female does have some of those same kind of caretaking, domestic maintenance kinds of things, but there's also this additional one of how to best put this, that you're also expected to pull some weight, right? And be as formidable as any males in your circle, right? There was that expectation.
Right. There's no wait till your dad gets home.
No, there was not really of that. My grandmother would beat our asses in a second, and then dare my daddy to say anything about it, right? So, there was a little bit of a difference in that regard,
right?
But when it came to those like domestic things and the real deep kind of caretaking, that was left to the females.
Right.
So
And we didn't even question that stuff. Like, I mean, not that I still love, and I say in the at the end of the show, if you put me in, you make me pick a box, I'm always going to pick the pink box. I'm always going to identify with female, and I'm grateful for that. Like, I'm so super grateful that if I had to be born on this planet at this time, that I was born with female genitalia, so that I got that training, because the male training that they get is oh, we don't want to go there, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I actually was pretty fortunate in that in my particular, birth family, there was a kind of a different, for example, when I was like little, I liked guns and Westerns and shoot 'em ups, and I would fight you in a second. And I never got any kind of pushback from my parents around. Right. I like guns. So Christmas time, I got myself a little pair of 6-shooters.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I did not have any pushback on that. And I, to this day, don't exactly know why.
Right.
That happened. It just, part of me thinks it was just my dad wanted a son.
Yeah. What about you when you were older? So did your gender expression, so we would say your gender expression when you were little, just like mine, was tomboy. Then when you got up into high school and were expected to start being interested in boys and those kind of things that we were all expected to do, I used to have to get drunk to do. It's not true. I had a loved my boyfriend. But once that was over, then it was like, to be with boys, I had to drink.
Yeah.
But like, so once your gender, then did you wear pants? Did you wear dresses in high school? Like, was there how did that go?
Yeah, I preferred, and that is probably the place where it did become a little bit of a struggle in my family, mostly with my mother, because she wanted me to always wear dresses and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, there was also other like presentation stuff. Like I had the afro out to here, which she hated. I love my afro. I had a comb and afro in my hair. Yeah. I did the whole thing. So nice. She was not, she didn't like that.
No,
anyway, right. So it wasn't only about the gender stuff.
Right.
In a way, good, because it took some of the pressure off.
Sure.
The gender questions. I could, I would occasionally put on a skirt or a dress.
Sure.
To shut her up and,
right.
Happy. But mostly she left me alone because it was a constant battle about all of it.
Right. Yeah.
So, but there was that pressure to have a certain presentation. Yes.
Right. What year did you graduate high school? I can't remember, because I know you're 72. Right. Mm-hmm. So I mean, your height of the late 60s, 70s during that time. So everybody was wearing bell bottoms, right? Yes. Or
yes. Yes. The big flared bell bottoms, So, and I think for my mother, if she had just let me be myself, it would have been better, because her big thing was she didn't want me to get pregnant.
Right. That was not right.
I'm like,
you got pregnant because you got
trying to mess with that.
Right. I know, right? It's like, I don't need all that mess.
Really, you
finally got pregnant because you ended up married to a dude.
Yes, exactly. Right? Exactly. Little did she know, she should have just left me alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like that resistance, right? What you push against gets stronger.
Yes.
So funny.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Right on. Well, one of the other things that I love that you and I have a really strong connection around is our heart connection. And, I did a video on Non-Binary People's Day or something. I had this shirt on and I was talking about the fact that my kiddo made me this shirt. Right? It says #1 Maddie, because a Maddie is a mom daddy, and that I live in this in-between world. Excuse me. And you and I have that in common. And so, I don't relate as, and I know you may identify as a woman. I kind of identify in between. But when I did this video, the trolls that came out were just unbelievable. I mean, it was
really,
oh my God, they were just so pissed off at me.
yeah, I shouldn't be. Why should I be? I'm
I know,
only
why are you
surprised because
surprised?
it's you.
It
Like,
just,
why are you
they
mad at
just,
Jay?
yeah, you're gonna be mad at me. Well, and that's where I'm going with this is that, of all the things that you've been through, and one of the things that, we just are celebrating the 20th anniversary of 9/11 last month. And, when you and I were in DC together at 9/11, and matter of fact, I think that you were in my living room. We were watching CNN the day after or something,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Remember it specifically. And one of the things that you shared with me at that time is remembering the riots, that this wasn't not your first rodeo to have soldiers on every corner in Washington, D.C. So for those of you who aren't familiar, we were in Washington, D.C. at 9/11. And basically what happened is after the day of 9/11, on 9/11, the city cleaned out, like the whole place, just everybody left. And those of us who are living in the city, I was living right down at 18th and U. You could go outside and there were no airplanes. There was no traffic. There was no, I mean, it was creepy. It was eerie.
Yes.
It was eerie because Washington, D.C. is always going. I mean, for the most part, it's not New York City, but it's a city. It's going. Yes. So, I mean, here we are, and it's no planes, no traffic, no nothing. And then the tanks rolled in, right? And then when the tanks come in, and then there's soldiers on every corner. And that's what it was like to be in Washington, D.C. for months after 9/11. Yes. And you and I were having this conversation. You reminded me that it wasn't your first rodeo with having soldiers on the corner. Can you just talk us a little bit about, like, you've been through a lot of stuff in our country. And the thing that I want to highlight here that you and I have in common is that you always, I'm going to get moved. I'm sorry, but you always come back to being a loving human.
I
right?
try.
Like you do always.
I try.
So I would love to just hear you share a little bit about, just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think it was really, and there was a little mini replication of that on January 6th.
Oh, I bet there was, yeah. And I wasn't there.
Yeah, they weren't everywhere in the city, but there was a presence.
Yeah.
So after Dr. King was assassinated, of course, DC, like many, many cities, went up in flames. And I remember sitting in, which is not that far from where I live right now, sitting in the bedroom upstairs in the house where we lived, and I could see the smoke from the fires. And my older sister, who was at that time in high school, talked about how they had a lot of the National Guard was bivouacked at the high school, which I can see that high school from my window right now.
Yeah.
And so it was very, at that time, a little disconcerting because you did not know if somebody was going to give an order for those troops to do things, right?
Yeah.
And to do them to, people who were basically innocent. At the time, my mother, she was a lifelong civilian employee of the Department of Defense.
Okay.
And she actually was very good at calming us, right?
Yeah.
Because she knew exactly, and she was still going to work at the Pentagon while all of this was going on. And she would say to us, don't worry, they're not gonna come into this immediate neighborhood and those kinds of things. So it was, we could process it a little better. Mm-hmm. It took time to process it because it was like a war state, it was like they were everywhere and they were not. Well, my sister, who was in high school, she would say, oh, they're so cute. And I talked to one and all of that, I didn't care about any, of that, right? It's like, these are people with guns. They didn't look cute to me, but okay, she thought they were cute. And so it was like nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
So when 9/11 happened, I had already been nerve-wracked previous. Just be like, okay, I know
you were really chill. You're like, this is cool.
I've seen this before, right?
Right.
So, and hopefully nothing will pop off.
Right.
But there's something has to be done.
Right. Yeah.
Thank God, goddess, the creator,
right.
that they had to, do anything.
Right.
But it was, I knew what people like you who hadn't had that previous,
right.
I knew what you were going through because I had done that. I was like 15.
I was going to say, but you were like 15 years old.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was a whole different time. Yes.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, I don't know what else I want to say to wrap except for that. My commitment is to love the transphobia out of people. and so I wanted to start this whole conversation of revealing gender powerfully. And I couldn't think of anybody better to start within you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You are the love, and you are one of my loves. And
I love that shirt. I love that.
Isn't that beautiful? my small gay had that made for me and designed it. So it's super cool. Yeah, I love being a Maddie, and I love Jessica uses the word husband, which I really like a lot. And I just I think it's important for us to create new words. Right now we have the language, we can do it.
Yeah, well, and we should always be, I think, trying to evolve how we articulate who we are.
Yeah.
So much of the progress that has been made is because people like me and you and other folks came out and stood up and, came out of the shadows, as they were, so that folks who actually cared anything about us had to make a choice.
That's right.
That's right. Had to make a choice.
Yeah, and some people chose not to be our friends.
Right.
Like, I had people who you never know who's going to be the one.
Right.
Who's going to stand by you. You really don't. I mean, you could think, because I had some of the closest people to me who I thought, there's no matter what, I thought, well, of course, that person's always going to be in my life. Right. And that's not the case. I've lost some really very close people to me from coming out. And I came out at the age of 18, and I know you came out young. And I think that, there were definitely people ahead of us, thank God, but ahead of you, not very many.
Not that many.
No, but you were ahead of me, and blazed a trail, and I blazed a trail. And, and so that's the last thing I wanted to just thank you for being an out human being. And, even though, like I used to say, everywhere I went, it was like a dike stamped across my forehead. You can just see me coming. And I know that's always been the case for you too. So it's like, you gotta roll with that.
Yes. Well, I fully support you in bringing people along on a journey towards greater understanding, right? And not just tolerance, but acceptance, that you do it is by speaking directly about who we are, how we are, from the heart. And that, I just think that's the ultimate strategy. Yeah,
I agree. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we close out?
No, I have 2 grandchildren, 2 granddaughters, and they are, both. My oldest loves me just as I am. She fights for me if she thinks she has to. And
I know that child. I wouldn't want to tangle with her. I'm so glad that you're happy in your life. It's you deserve all the happiness in the world, my friend. If you are on Instagram or any of those places, we'll make sure we link those if people want to follow you or any of that kind of stuff. Anything you're up to lately you want to share?
Really, right now, all I'm doing is taking care of that youngest granddaughter while her parents are working. Nice. But and that in and of itself is an honor and a great duty, because I'm giving her a loving, secure, heartfelt beginning. So
that's an important mission, my friend.
Yes.
All right. Well, I love you, and thank you so much for being here. All right. Bye-bye.